This week on Unforgotten,
we wanted to share a special episode with you in light of April's Autism Awareness Month. People with disabilities in general tend to be more at risk of becoming a victim of crime because many are or are viewed as vulnerable. That these people, most who have been children and young adults, were in some way taken advantage of or neglected.
Because Phoenix has autism, he is nonverbal. He was not able to respond to anyone looking for him when he went missing.
Search for Sebastian Rogers. They say there are no new actionable leads in this case. The 15-year-old who does have autism has been missing since February.
the evidence of Jason's life at all was a birth certificate and a photo. Although at some point, I think they learned that Jason was reported to have been autistic and nonverbal.
There has to be something more to that story.
There's some big gaps in that
there's some
story.
gaps. For sure, yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Sellers.
And this is Stormy.
And this is Unforgotten.
Where each episode will highlight unsolved missing, murdered, and suspicious death cases in Alabama in order to raise awareness and hopefully obtain some answers for victims and their families.
Please remember that any individual referenced in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law, and any opinions or views expressed in the podcast are solely those of participants. Listener discretion is advised, as some of the content discussed in the podcast may contain violence or graphic descriptions and may not be suitable for all audiences.
And now for episode 35, World Autism Month. Hey guys, welcome back. We wanted to share a special episode with you in light of April's Autism Awareness Month. One of the things I noticed when researching a bit on this was that there is a lot of differing views on what this month represents and how those with autism are viewed. Should this month be called Autism Awareness or Autism Acceptance? Whether this recognition is helping with awareness or highlighting a stigma, if it is meant for education or publicity for specific groups, or so that autistic persons can simply be accepted for who they are as people. I'm no expert, but I think it could be a bit from each of these things and maybe more. No one wishes for a specific mental or physical challenge, let alone to have a month designated to be recognized for that. No one wants to have a special victim awareness to be recognized for. But I think in the end, it helps more than it hinders. I think whether or not it furthers an agenda, designated awareness months do indeed raise awareness, and they help share real information for education, experience, legitimate research, and care. In this case, care for those with autism. We encourage anyone to feel free to share experiences or challenges with autism or challenges in regards to victim awareness or acceptance. You can post those on our podcast post, on Patreon, and on our social media pages. In addition to sharing some information, we're going to reshare a case with you today that features a child who had autism and that it likely contributed to their disappearance. And if you know of a cold case involving a victim who has ASD, we'd like to hear from you so that we can reshare their case as well. Most of you probably know what autism is, at least in the general sense of the word. However, many people have a very limited or even inaccurate perception of what that means. We hear buzzwords like on the spectrum and see people portrayed in movies, in particular stereotype characters with very specific genius tendencies like Rain Man or comedies portraying extreme cases of Asperger's. But more and more real people are cropping up on social media trying to educate the general public about what it really means to be on the spectrum. So today we wanted to provide you with a little bit of information about this very often misunderstood developmental challenge. This will not be in depth, and I'm not any kind of an expert. I'm just doing some research. So if I say any incorrect information today, please feel free to correct me and we'll issue some sort of update. Most of this I got off of some reputable sites, so I think we're pretty good, at least in what I'm regurgitating for you. This will hardly do the subject justice, I can tell you that, but we hope it will help. I'm going to read a bit from the CDC website that gives a fair overview. There's a lot of information out there on this, so in addition to this excerpt, we'll include the link to this and several other websites providing information and resources. From the CDC. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. Some people with ASD have a known difference, such as a genetic condition. Other causes are not quite yet known. Scientists believe there are multiple causes of ASD that act together to change the most common ways people develop. We still have much to learn about these causes and how they impact people with ASD. People with ASD may behave, communicate, interact, and learn in ways that are different from most other people. There is nothing about how they look that sets them apart from other people. The abilities of people with ASD can vary significantly. For example, some people with ASD may have advanced conversation skills, whereas others may be nonverbal. Some people with ASD need a lot of help in their daily lives. Others can work and live with little to no support. ASD begins before the age of 3 years old and can last throughout a person's life, although symptoms may improve over time. Some children show ASD symptoms within the first 12 months of life. In others, symptoms may not show up for 24 months of age or later. Some children with ASD gain new skills and meet developmental milestones until around 18 to 24 months of age. And then they stop gaining new skills or lose the skills they once had. As children with ASD become adolescents and young adults, they may have difficulties developing and maintaining friendships, communicating with peers and adults, or understanding what behaviors are expected in school or in the job. They may come to the attention of healthcare providers because they also have conditions such as anxiety, depression, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which occur more often in people with ASD than in people without ASD. Signs and symptoms. People with ASD often have problems with social communication and interaction and restricted or repetitive behaviors or interests. People with ASD may also have different ways of learning, moving, or paying attention. These characteristics can make life very challenging. It's important to note that some people without ASD might also have some of these symptoms." Unquote. So there are many organizations that support and assist individuals with autism and their families out there. In addition to the CDC site link, we wanted to share a few online resources with you. We'll mention a few and list them in the episode description, which will be a bit longer than usual. And though so many of us turn to searching online out of convenience or to get pointed in a direction, your personal physician or your local social and health services agency should be able to help point you to the resources you need if you have concerns for yourself or a loved one who may have autism. People with disabilities in general tend to be more at risk of becoming a victim of crime because many are or are viewed as vulnerable and often trusting. Maybe over-trusting is a better word. Many of the resources we're mentioning provide education on personal safety for the autistic individuals, as well as educating their loved ones. We hope that these resources and education will help reduce the risk of violent crime to our autistic community, as well as other special needs individuals. So one site we went to was Autism Support of Alabama. And this is an organization that provides information and resources specifically for autism. They have a lot of great programs, including community education through workshops and conferences and even coffee chats. They also have a family camp called Camp Frog Family, which is such a cute name. And it's a weekend camp at Lake Martin to help give families some unique adaptive fun and connect with other families. Another thing that we noticed that this organization does do, which can tie into our world of cold cases and true crime, They have an autism safety initiative that is designed to help first responders with challenges that they may face in emergency encounters with individuals with autism and their families. This can be medical or crime related, but what this means to us is that they are providing help for EMTs and LEOs to recognize key behaviors and other such things so that they don't jump to any conclusions if an individual doesn't react the way they expect when they respond to the situation. In addition to all of this, for Autism Awareness Month, they also have an annual Autism Awareness Walk that you can participate in person in 7 cities, or you can attend virtually. And we'll have the link for that as well in our details. Another organization is Alabama Family Trust, AFT. AFT is the only nonprofit trust company in Alabama that helps to set up financial trusts that complement but don't replace programs for children, adults, and seniors with disabilities and other special needs. Their goal is to help provide a quality of life to these individuals, and this includes ASD individuals. Another one that we have that I looked up was Alabama Disabilities Advocacy Program. And on their site, they tote, quote, "We can help with disability rights issues, specifically like community access, special education, Medicaid, voting rights, assistive technology, medical waivers, alternatives to guardianship, and investigating complaints that disabled people are being abused or neglected," unquote. And I think that's super important because that last bit is where a lot of our at-risk community get into a bit of trouble or taken advantage of. And if we have support like that in our communities from advocacy programs and that sort of thing, I just think that's awesome. Most, if not all, states have programs that many people aren't even aware are available. Generally, state-sponsored programs can be accessed through your local social and health agencies. We encourage you to seek support in your own state or city. Here are some national resources that are not necessarily in Alabama, but are for pretty much anyone. The CDC site that we mentioned, of course. There is the Autism Society, and it's an organization that has just a myriad of resources. Again, what relates to our area focus is that they have an Autism Justice Center. And here's a description from their website. The Autism Justice Center uses various strategies, including direct advocacy, education, and litigation support. The Autism Justice Center is developing resources for legal professionals so that they may better represent and support autistic clients. The Autism Justice Center works closely with the Autism Society's public policy team on legislative initiatives and with our national programs team on training first responders and other safety initiatives. The Autism Justice Center will focus on empowerment, advocacy, and justice. So because education for autism in individuals with other mental and physical challenges is not always available or known if it would help to reduce vulnerability, and because in the general population, there are unfortunately a large number of missing and murdered in Alabama and across the U.S. and globally, of course, we are sharing a few crime victim advocacy links as well in Alabama and nationally. These are helpful resources for victims and their families who face the loss of a loved one and the aftermath of crime, particularly violent crime. And of course, in addition to our own mission and resources for cold case advocacy, we'll include a few links for cold case advocacy as well. And we'll put all of this in our episode description. There are a growing number of resources available out there. So we know that there are several fantastic advocates out there that we haven't named. But these are some wonderful ones, and we just encourage you to go and research. So there have been a few missing autistic person cases in the media lately. It brings into focus not just the need for awareness of autism, but that these people, most who have been children and young adults, were in some way taken advantage of or neglected. Not every case ends up being something more than an unfortunate happenstance, but it does seem that quite a few do. For example, one of the most highly publicized cases recently was the adorable little redheaded boy, Phoenix.
Sheriff Smith says without everyone's help, they would not have been able to bring this boy home.
Everyone has been here, so we just want to say thank you to everyone and all the resources that was put out, and we're just thankful that this kid was found alive, and it just could have been a lot worse.
Because Phoenix has autism, he is nonverbal and was not able to respond to anyone looking for him when he went missing. But now that he's home, Sheriff Thomas says it's even more difficult to get answers to questions that investigators may have. Now, Sheriff Smith says that this is still an ongoing investigation.
And though we don't know the complete details of the actual disappearance, his parents neglected to care for him properly, and they exposed him to drugs in his home.
We have some new developments tonight in the case of Phoenix Wilkerson, the 4-year-old boy who went missing for 2 days in Barber County. As we first reported earlier on News 4, the boy's parents have now been arrested and charged. 25-year-old Cheyenne Ray and 39-year-old Joshua Wilkerson are facing 2 counts of chemical endangerment of a child. The arrests come after an investigation into the child's disappearance by Aaliyah and the State Bureau of Investigation.
He fortunately had a good outcome, as best can be, because he was found safe.
I went to hollering and everybody ran over there. I feel good that I found him. I don't just give myself, all the credit because it was more than just me out there. But I mostly give credit to the man above because if it wasn't from him, none of us would have found him. So.
And there's another young boy still missing out there now who's receiving quite a bit of attention in social media also. And also a bit of negative attention, not for him, but those surrounding his case who have been involved in searches. And I won't go into that today. I mentioned that just because that may be where you're seeing a lot of the media out there. I would encourage you not to get too deep into all of the conspiracy parts of it and focus on the important thing, and that's finding the little boy. And I shouldn't say little boy, I guess he's a teenager. So, I don't want to detract from the fact that Sebastian has been missing since February 25th.
On the search for Sebastian Rogers, they say there are no new actionable leads in this case. The 15-year-old who does have autism has been missing since February now, when his parents said he ran away from home in the middle of the night. WSMV's Brendan Tierney has the very latest on where the investigation goes from here.
The Sheriff's Department and TBI says they still haven't found any signs of foul play in the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, but they also haven't been able to rule it out. Well, the very visual ground search around Sumner County has been scaled back. Deputies say they're continuing to work every day following up on tips. They're going back and re-interviewing people, including Sebastian's parents, but say at this point there's no evidence they did anything criminal.
We are keeping options open. We don't know what has happened. We don't know where Sebastian is right now, so we are pursuing any and all avenues.
Deputies say Sebastian's parents have moved to Memphis, but that has not interfered with their investigation. Officials are asking people to remain on alert and keep sharing Sebastian's photo until he's found.
I did a quick search and found several more, but I think that gives you the picture. And today, the case we're going to share is Jason Sims Jr., who went missing under really odd circumstances. And we shared his case in October of last year in episode 23. He's from Fairfield in Jefferson County. I did leave a message with Police Chief Julius Hunter. I did have to leave a message, unfortunately, and I have not yet heard back. So if I do hear back from him, we'll make sure to post an update. So without further ado, here's your episode.
We're talking about a somewhat bizarre case, the disappearance of 15-year-old Jason Sims Jr. from Fairfield, located slightly southwest of Birmingham. Fairfield Police Department actually began investigating Jason Sims Sr. and Natasha Wright in 2013 related to child neglect claims. At that point, Fairfield PD was under the impression that there were only 2 children in their home at the time, ages 10 and 12. They had no knowledge of any other children, but when they arrived, they discovered that there was potentially Jason and another 9-year-old. But what was crazy was they couldn't find anything to really confirm that Jason had ever existed. In fact, the only evidence of Jason's life at all was a birth certificate and a photo.
That's so very odd.
They found no school records, no medical records, although at some point I think they learned that Jason was reported to have been autistic and nonverbal. Authorities later attempted to serve warrants on Sims Sr. and Wright at their 59th Street home in Fairfield in 2014 regarding the child neglect claims, but nobody was home. Well, in 2015, somebody found Natasha Wright unconscious in the home.
Mm.
I'm not really sure what happened there. AL.com said it was due to a medical condition. Others didn't really say what happened. She was taken to the hospital, and apparently she remained unconscious for several days, like 3 days or something like that.
Wow.
While she's unconscious, Fairfield Police Department undertakes trying to locate these children because they're not in the house. And I guess Jason Sims Sr. wasn't at the house. They find 3 of the 4 children with relatives and put them in DHR's custody. Well, when Natasha wakes up in the hospital, she asks them about Jason. And they're like, Jason? You know? She said the last time she'd seen him was at home. She said the last time she'd seen him was at home, but she could give them no time frame for when that actually was.
Huh.
That's crazy.
That is really odd. Yeah.
So he would have been 15 at the time. And police think that he was missing long before this because the only photos that they could find of him were from the age of 5 and younger.
Wow.
How insane is that? So they've got a birth certificate and photos from 5 and younger, but nothing between. That's the only proof that Jason ever existed. They don't know when she last saw him. The neighbors can't really confirm anything. One neighbor was interviewed by one of the media outlets, and I can't remember which one, but they reported, seeing Jason Sr. with a child, but that he wasn't like a very friendly neighbor or anything like that and didn't really socialize or talk to the neighbors. So nobody really knew anything about him, but nobody really could say anything about Jason. Like, had he ever even been in the house?
Yeah. Huh.
And I don't know what happened as far as, the family. Like, I don't know that anybody in the family could ever say when the last time they saw him was.
Yeah, that's so odd.
It is really odd. And what I don't really understand is this part where in 2016, they filed charges against Jason Sims Sr. with a felony failure to report a child missing, but not against Natasha Wright, the mother, just Jason. And it gets even weirder because in 2019, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of failure to report a child missing, 2nd degree. But his attorney, prior to him pleading guilty, his attorney, Edward Reynolds, tells CBS 42 that Jason Sr. was frustrated because he wasn't even Jason's father, even though the names implied otherwise. That Jason was given Jason Sr.'s name, but that Jason Sr. was not listed on Jason Jr.'s birth certificate. And that Jason Sr. had only saw, quote, this child or a child when DHR requested to see all of Wright's children. So his attorney wouldn't even acknowledge whether Jason existed at this point.
Huh. Wow.
He even went so far as to say, quote, we don't know if this child exists. And I say this because I'm not sure if this child exists. There's still some doubt in my mind if the child actually exists.
I don't have any words. That's like one of the oddest cases I've heard.
Yes. And it was actually the authorities that filed the missing person report in 2015, not anybody in the family. The authorities did, because what do? That you've got a birth certificate that clearly says a child was born. And you know that at least up until they were 5 years old, there was a child. What happened after that, nobody really knows. The lead detective, after those comments from Edward Reynolds saying, I still have doubts about this, the lead detective said Natasha Wright was cooperating with the authorities, but she didn't know where Jason had went. Yet she had assured them that Jason was, in fact, very real. And maybe her cooperating is what stopped her from having charges pressed against her.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's so bizarre.
Given the limited photos available, authorities enlisted NCMEC to provide an age-progressed photo of what Jason may have looked like at the time, at what somebody would look like as they age. And so this is sad that here we have a 15-year-old that somebody should have a photo of to know what he looked like when he went missing, and yet there's not one. So for 10 years of his life, there's no photos, and they're having to guess what he looked like. It just blows my mind. It's weird.
And unfortunately, you kind of think he has a lot writing against him now because there's hardly any documentation of him. So how is anybody except for the people that lived with him at the time going to even know?
There's not going to be no dental records, no nothing, and there's part of you that thinks maybe like, okay, maybe there wasn't a Jason, but there's a birth certificate.
Yeah. Huh.
Right. And it obviously the birth certificate didn't belong. If they knew enough to say that he was 15 years old, it clearly didn't belong to the 10, 12 or 9-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
But where is he? What happened to him? Did the neighbors see him? Did they count 4 children at the house at any time? Did the family count 4 children? If Jason Sr. wasn't the father, who was? Did he stay with the biological father? Was it because if he was really autistic and nonverbal, was it just too much for them to do? So did they adopt him? How? Somebody knows where this child is.
Yeah.
And you want to think that if that's the case, they got him to a loving home.
I sure hope so. Especially if he was, as challenged as it sounds like he may be.
Jason Sims Sr. is adamant he has no idea. But the detectives believe he has some idea. And I tend to kind of agree, because can you live in a household with somebody and not know? But also, how do you not know when the last time you saw your child was?
Yeah, I think there has to be something more to that story.
There's some big gaps in that story.
Gaps, for sure, yeah.
So Jason Sims Jr. is an African-American male and was described as being approximately 5'6" and 125 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He's described as having a light complexion, but that is about the extent of the information available. His hair color and eye color are listed as unknown and nameless. But the little picture that they have of him when he was 5 years old, or whatever age that is, he was really cute. He was such a precious little boy.
Well, hopefully he made it. If you have any information related to Jason Sims Jr. or his disappearance, please contact Fairfield Police Department at 205-786-5217. Or you can contact Jefferson County Sheriff's Office as well at 205-325-5700. And they have a website where you can submit an anonymous tip at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office as well. We'll have that for you in the episode details.
Since Alabama Cold Case Advocacy's creation, we have dedicated innumerable hours to researching and networking in an effort to provide the largest platform we can to the cases we share. We shoulder all associated expenses with Alabama Cold Case Advocacy out of our own pocket, including the subscription fees for researching and production of the Unforgotten podcast, to provide a cost-free avenue for the victims' families of those cases.
We hope you will join in our efforts to raise awareness of Alabama's missing and murdered and support these families who have been forced to carry the immeasurable loss of their loved ones and the fight for answers. If you appreciate our mission and you are inspired to make a donation, your extra support will enable the ACCA to continue our research, share the cold cases, and help those families know that they are also unforgotten.
Unforgotten is an Alabama cold case advocacy podcast recorded in conjunction with Riverside FM, hosted and distributed by Spotify for podcasters, available on your favorite podcast platform. Intro music for the show was created by Principles of Uncertainty, who also mixed and mastered this episode. Content and production is by Sellers and Stormy. Artwork by Sellers. Credits for music, sound clips, special mentions, and any source referenced in our podcast can be found in each episode's description. We hope you will join us on all the major social media sites and continue to raise awareness of our Alabama cold cases. Until next time, thank you for listening, and remember, justice may be delayed, but the victims and their families remain unforgotten.